What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? Well, after both teams survived Game 7s in their respective league championship series, the LA Dodgers and the Tampa Bay Rays are ready to square off in the World Series. The Rays are looking for their first ever World Series title, while the storied Dodgers are seeking their first championship since 1988. Our baseball analyst, Rob Duran of Rob Duran Sports, is ready to break the series down and to provide his fearless prediction on which team will emerge with the title. So hang tight. We're coming back with Rob Duran talking World Series baseball on Sports 360. Well, joining me today on Sports 360 is our baseball expert, Rob Duran of Rob Duran Sports, and he's here to talk about the 2020 World Series. Rob, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing well, Jeff, man. Thank you for having me, and we're here, man. World Series 2020. Can you believe it?
I can't. I really can't. I've gone on record of saying I did not think we would get to the postseason. I didn't think we would get through the regular season, but we did. And yeah, we're here, man. October baseball, and it's been interesting. It's been an interesting ride, hasn't it?
It definitely has. And baseball is such a poetic sport, and it's kind of been like the theme of the playoffs. Even unfortunately, the Yankees losing to the Rays, just the ending of that, who hit the home run off of who, just kind of brings everything together. Baseball is such a poetic type sport, though. And, through all the pandemic stuff, the cancellations, everything that we went through for the season, at the end of the day, we have the two best teams in baseball facing off for the World Series. And here we are.
Yeah, here we are. The World Series, as we're speaking, will start tomorrow night with Game 1, and it should be a really intriguing matchup. And I'm interested to get your thoughts on the series. But before getting to the matchups and talking about the series, both teams had to win Game 7s to get here. But they did it in different ways, right? The Rays nearly squandered a 3 games to none lead over Houston, whereas the Dodgers, were down 3-1 to the Braves and were able to win three in a row in order to advance to the World Series. I don't know if that matters. I don't know if it matters for from a standpoint of momentum, or more importantly, from you know the state of the respective pitching staffs. But both teams were in dogfights to get here. What do you think about the league championship series before we jump into the World Series?
I think it was great baseball to watch. We had a little bit of history on both sides, like you mentioned. And, I think it's a mix of everything you mentioned there, the momentum and, the emotions and all that stuff for both teams. Because, like you said, the Rays were on the brink of a huge collapse, one that we've only seen once before. And then the Dodgers had to come back and make their own history, which I don't think anyone expected them to be down 3-1, trying to get into the World Series. So I think, there was a lot of excitement on both sides, and just kind of seeing how these teams handled that pressure. I think we're set up for a great World Series. I'm hoping for 7 full games, to be honest with you, with this World Series. I want as much baseball as possible. But, that Rays series with Houston, I'll be the first one to say I was shocked that Houston was there. I had them losing to the Twins back in the very beginning. And they just kept on winning. They kept on going along. Carlos Correa did his thing in the playoffs. The guy was just on fire. And their pitching, which, was a huge question mark, especially after losing Cole in the offseason and Verlander to injury. They had Lance McCullers Jr. coming back from Tommy John, which was, it's a big question mark in itself. But, they made it all the way this far. And on the brink of elimination. They win 3 games in a row, pushing the Rays now to their own elimination. And, you know, the Rays in itself, their story and their season, we've touched on it in the past. You know, they're a team that has deserved this respect, you know, and they've earned this respect, and they're here. You know, they're telling the world, hey, we've been good all along. Just because the Yankees and the Red Sox in past years have had better records doesn't mean we're not on par with them talent-wise. And they're a team with no superstars. And I can show you a list of their rosters to any fan, any casual fan, and they won't be able to name one person on that list that they know. But they play such great fundamental baseball, defensively, offensively, pitching-wise, all that stuff. They play just such great baseball. It's incredible to watch that team, and it's great to see them in the World Series. And as far as the National League, the Braves gave us some excitement. And to my surprise as well, you know, they had their pitching woes going into the playoffs, and their pitching was shut down for the first few rounds of the playoffs. Incredible. And, you know, they had a few hiccups here and there against the Dodgers during that championship series. Ultimately, they couldn't hang on, and the Dodgers did what the Dodgers do, which is flex their muscles and let the world know, hey, we may be down, but we're definitely not out. And here they are going into another World Series, hopefully try and win a World Series this time around.
And, you know, in the American League, you know, I believe that there were a significant number of people who did not want to see Houston continue to advance. And so, and I'm not saying I was necessarily one of them. I mean, it's an intriguing story, no matter which way you look at it, right?
Yes,
On the one hand, you may want them to get their comeuppance. On the other hand, you know, you have to give them their due for their resilience and for playing like champions. They didn't quite get there. They didn't seal the deal, but you know, they did go out there and really compete, and you know, they put a scare into Tampa. There's no question about that. They put a scare into Tampa. And one of the things before we turn to the World Series about Tampa that I'd like to say is this. The thing that concerns me a little bit about them coming into this series is if it wasn't for Arozarena, I don't know what they would have been doing, because they really did not hit in that series. And one thing we know for sure, it's not that the Dodgers were ripping the cover off the ball. At this time of the year, you generally don't, right? You're facing some really top-notch pitching, both starter and reliever, especially in the bullpens. So no team is going to be, you know, ripping the cover off the ball. But, you know, the Dodgers, you know, unlike the Rays, not only do you know the names of a lot of their players, but, you know, they have a tough lineup top to bottom. And so we'll talk about that. And then the last thing I'll say before turning it over to you to break down the World Series for us is, in the National League Series, I totally agree that Corey Seager should have been the MVP. I mean, he had, you know, he had the biggest stick in the series, and you know, he had some huge hits. But Mookie Betts, man, on defense, I mean, I don't know how many runs he saved for them, but if he made a number of outstanding plays.
Yes, he did.
In the field, saving runs. And so, you know, that I think that series would have certainly turned out differently if he didn't make those type of plays. And they were not easy. They were fantastic defensive plays. And, you know, that's something that we come to expect from Mookie Betts, but still, having seen what he just pulled off in that series, that was phenomenal. His defensive play.
Yeah, his defense has always been gold, you know, platinum glove type defense in right field. And not enough can be said. You know, obviously he's a great offensive player, but defensively, the guy, you know, he's a superstar defensively, man. And we got to see that in the brightest lights in tough moments for Dodgers pitching. I think it was two games in a row he robbed a home run from one of the Braves players on just ridiculous catches. And we saw it throughout the season too. The way he throws the ball, all the way to third base on a couple of occasions, stuff like that, straight strikes. It's amazing the kind of player that Mookie Betts is and why he is a top 2, top 3 player in the league today, man. Incredible play. And this is why the Dodgers acquired him. They needed that extra boost, that extra piece that they were missing. And I think Mookie gives them that in every facet of the game, period.
Yeah. Again, not enough can be said about his defensive play in the LCS. But all right, so now we turn our attention to the World Series, and the Rays have the extra day of rest. They closed out Houston on Saturday. The Dodgers closed out the Braves last night, Sunday night, and so they have an extra day of rest. Can probably set up their starting rotation better than the Braves can, than the Dodgers can. So, having said all that, give us your breakdown on this matchup.
This is going to be a fun World Series, and I hope for 7 games, just because I'm a baseball lover and I want to see as much baseball as possible, especially since we were cut short this season. But I think Game 1 is going to be a very interesting matchup. Kershaw is going in Game 1, and I think he has to pitch shutout baseball. He has to go out there on the mound and let people know, hey, I'm leading this team. I'm leading this pitching staff. And that's going to be the huge question mark going into it, because he's had his playoff struggles. He's had a couple of games where he's done pretty good. But in the World Series, especially considering the storyline around the Dodgers, where they failed to win the World Series the last few years, Kershaw has to come out there and pitch a gem. And I'm talking about maybe 6, 7, maybe even 8 innings of just great baseball, something that he's capable of. So it's not something that, we're asking a number 4 or 5 starter to come out here and save the season. We're asking Clayton Kershaw to go out there and dominate and do what he does best. So I think that's going to be the number 1 key for the Dodgers in Game 1. And as far as the Rays, you mentioned their lineup, and their big thing is exactly what you pointed out. Their lineup isn't some crazy superpower lineup that's going to put a bunch of runs on the board. They're a big team. They're a team that has to manufacture their runs and be smart about how they play the game in order to score more runs than the other team. And I think if they can get to Kershaw early and often, that'll be the difference maker in that game. Once you shake Kershaw a little bit, I think his confidence starts to drop, and then you have to see Dave Roberts force himself into going into the bullpen early. And that's the key for Tampa. Not just in Game 1, I think for the entire series. They have to get into the Dodgers bullpen, which is probably their only question mark as a team in general, is the Dodgers bullpen. But with the Rays, man, they have to continue to play smart baseball. They have to continue to put on a defensive clinic and just be smarter than the Dodgers, which is going to be tough when you're facing a lineup like that.
The Rays are interesting to me, Rob, because they're not a bopping lineup, right?
Yeah.
But they strike out a lot, and you wouldn't think so. You would think that a team that doesn't rely on the home run, hit a lot of home runs, that they would be putting the ball in play, but they do strike out a lot. And
yes.
I think particularly against the Dodgers bullpen, that could prove to be a problem, right? Because that's the one of the chief ways to snuff out rallies, right? When you can get outs without runners who are on base advancing to the next base, and so it's going to be interesting to see that. On as far as Kershaw is concerned, Rob, if Kershaw pitches well, this series is over. I think Kershaw has never really been that for the Dodgers, and I can't explain that in the postseason, where he's not the Kershaw that we, have come to see during the regular season. And now he's getting older, and so even his regular season performance is not what it used to be, right?
Yeah.
But man, if just psychologically, if he does that, and just the way it sets up the rest of the series, and as you talked about his confidence, scoring runs against him, it may shake his confidence. And also the converse is true, right? If he goes out there and he's dealing, it not only infuses him with confidence, it will infuse the whole team with confidence. And I think that could be a difference maker. And so, it's funny. Every year, we always are saying the same thing. If Kershaw,
Yep.
right?
that
It's
that
amazing
is
for a
true.
guy who's on his way to the Hall of Fame. If Kershaw can do such and such thing, and here we are saying it again. You know,
I mean, yeah,
um,
and it's true because like I think what you're saying is true. If he goes out there and he deals and he gets that win and it's a convincing win, like we're talking about like vintage Kershaw, forget about it, man. Like that changes. I think that changes the whole series right after game one.
yeah, yeah. And I'd like to see the Rays, and maybe this is a sigh of relief having gotten past Houston, especially after almost choking away a 3-game lead. And look, I think that's the only way you could call it. I mean, I know that's not a good thing to say in sports or whatever, but come on, man, you up 3 games to none, right?
Yeah.
Um, but let's just say giving away, okay, giving away a 3-game lead. But hopefully they will now breathe a sigh of relief and maybe play um a little bit looser offensively, because I thought they were a bit tight. Rosarena played well. Choi was swinging a pretty good stick. You know what I mean? He was getting on base and all, but yeah, they didn't really do much. I guess Zanino had some big hits along the way. But they're going to have to they're going to need more, I believe, going against a Dodgers team that probably has breathed a bigger sigh of relief getting past the Braves and may be ready to go out there and rock and roll.
Yeah, and the Dodgers are going in there, like you said, they came back. So they're in there with some swag and some confidence that they haven't had maybe since, sometime midpoint in the season. Where now they're like, yeah, we could do this, man. Like we're in here. And, I think Mookie Betts adds to that, that swag and that confidence that the Dodgers need going into this World Series, especially with that comeback. But the Rays, man, and it goes back to, they have great pitching. I'm not they if I had to compare the pitching on both sides, I'd give the edge to the Rays, especially in the bullpen. But offensively, I think it's going to come down to that. Are guys like, Austin Meadows, is he going to start hitting? Is Willie Adames going to start hitting? Kevin Kiermaier is a guy who has struggled all season. Is he going to pick something up and develop, and manufacture some runs, whether it's on the bases or something like that? They need to hit. If they're not going to be able to hit, I don't think they'll be able to win this series at all. As great as their pitching is going to be, the Dodgers are going to score somehow because they're too good of a lineup to not score any runs. So, great pitching does beat great hitting, but the Dodgers lineup is amazing, and they're going to find ways to score. So I think, it goes back to that. Are the Rays going to be able to hit enough to give their pitchers a chance to win games?
Yeah. Now, another thing about the Dodgers that is really, it's really remarkable when you think about it, for a team that has been as successful as they have been, both regular season and postseason over the past several years, is that we talked about the Kershaw question, right? It's always if Kershaw. Um, but they've also had a question in another key area of their team, and that is in the closer's role. Because
Yes.
in the postseason, Kenley Jensen has always been kind of almost like a if Kenley, you know what I mean? So you got a if Kershaw and if Kenley, right? If these guys can perform the way they normally do. But one thing that's sort of developed here, and it's kind of quiet, but Kenley's been dealing. I mean, Kenley has seemed like he's sort of settled that part of the game down, and if he can do that, I think it relieves Dave Roberts of trying to do magic with his bullpen and all these matchups and you know what I mean? He can kind of know, well, I got Kenley for the ninth,
Yeah.
right? and he can manage differently, because I think there were times where, he had no confidence, and rightly so, in going to Kenley, because, this guy was giving up, home runs and everything else. But
Yep.
Kenley's been looking pretty good. So if that holds to form, I think that's something else that would make the Dodgers tough in this matchup.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. It's not just this year. He struggled in the past as well. And then, in that series against the Padres, I think it was I want to say it was game 3. He had that 3-run lead or something like that and gave that up. And that's kind of where Dave Roberts said, all right, we're in the playoffs here. We got to try to figure something out. And I think what was good is allowing him to try to pitch through it and not just bench the guy and just call it quits. He needed to get his confidence back. And it seems like he's been able to, whether it was mechanical, mentally, or something, he's been able to figure it out. And he's been able to come through, and he's mixing his cutter and his two-seamer very well. And it's made the difference. And hopefully, for the Dodgers' sake, they're able to have that guy who can come in, whether it's 2 outs in the eighth inning or something like that, to kind of close out the game from there. That's huge to know that, peace of mind, going late into games, whether it's a 1-run game, 2-run game, that you can count on somebody to shut the door for you, and you can go home, sleep easy, and know that you're going to have some more baseball the next day.
Yeah, and if he can continue to do that, I think it helps the Dodgers. Obviously, and makes it tougher for the Rays. I also think that the Rays, they seem to be relying, I don't know. It's interesting. I guess, both teams in their bullpen, um, you know, have some guys who have really been pitching well, and then they have some question marks. If you look at the two teams, though, which bullpen would you rank as being the better of the two?
I think if I had to pick, I'd go with the Rays. And I know they weren't as solid, I guess you can say, with the Astros, especially with those 3 games they lost in a row. But I think the Rays, they have some arms. Nick Anderson is one. Fairbanks, Castillo is another one. Those 3 guys are very, very good pitchers. And they have, what Kevin Cash calls a stable of guys. And he's right. If you're tall, if you're young and you can throw 98, you're probably in the Rays bullpen. And, when these guys are on, especially Nick Anderson, he had an amazing year this year. If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw somewhere he only gave up like 5 hits or something like that all season. But I think I'd give the edge to the Rays just because of the kind of firepower they can put out there and big strikeout numbers they have the potential of, adding up. So, yeah, I'd definitely give the edge to the Rays. But it depends also on what the Dodgers do with their bullpen. They have a couple guys who are starters who can go in there and give them some length in the bullpen, which I think can make a difference in a series like this. But as currently constructed, I definitely give the edge to the Rays in their bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Anderson has been great all year. He's been scuffed up a little bit
Yeah.
in his postseason. But Kevin Cash is going to have no reservations whatsoever, going to him in crunch time. So, all right, well, who do you see emerging out of this and coming away with the World Series title, and tell us why?
Well, this is going to be, like I said, I think it's going to be a great World Series. I think, we have the 2 best teams in all of baseball. Both teams won 40-plus games. Through everything, here we are, the 2020 World Series. I'm hoping for 7 games, and I think the Dodgers will finally get over that hump and crown themselves World Series champions. I think they'll earn the victory. I don't think it's going to be anything that the Rays give away per se or something like that. I think the Dodgers are going to earn it, and I think they have to earn it in order to, really garner that respect and get that respect that they need. And I think it's going to be Mookie Betts is going to be the difference maker. He's a champion. He's been there before. He has that championship pedigree, that championship attitude, and I think he's going to rally his guys and lead the Dodgers to a World Series finally. And LA is going to celebrate again. They just had the Lakers win the NBA championship, and now they're going to have the Dodgers hopefully take the World Series championship as well. But it's going to be a great, great series. So I definitely encourage everyone to tune into this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I believe this is the year the Dodgers break through. We sort of joked early on when we were looking at the early rounds and said that the pressure was on the Dodgers this postseason. Given the past failures to win it all, and I think that was right. But they got here, and again, they've been here before, right? And they haven't been able to close it out, but they didn't have Mookie Betts before. And
Exactly.
I also believe that, they had 3 consecutive elimination games, right? And they survived them against the Braves, and I think they just have to be filled with confidence. Not that the Rays aren't, but, I think this is the Dodgers' time. They've overcome a lot of adversity. They faced a lot of adversity. And for a moment there, it looked like, it could have been Dodgers Astros, which would have really been intriguing, right? But I still think that this matchup is intriguing, but I'm with you. I'm looking for the Dodgers to emerge with this one. And I don't believe it's going to go 7 games. I think the Dodgers are going to handle this one pretty handily. I wouldn't be surprised they take this in 5. I mean, I know you want to see 7, so I hope it will be 7 just for you. But I think the Dodgers will take this in 5. So
honestly, I think the Dodgers can do 5 or 6 if they're really on and they continue that momentum from the championship series. I think 5 or 6 will be 6 being max that they'll take care of this. But I'm hoping for 7.
Yeah, I hear you. I think a lot of people are too, especially in Major League Baseball, given, everything that's transpired this season. But all right, so we'll see what happens, Rob. We have game 1 tomorrow night as we're speaking here on Monday night. And, we will have a 2020 World Series champion in about a week or so. So it should be good, man. Enjoy the games. And, after the series is over, we'll come back with a recap. But always, man, good talking baseball with you. And we'll see how this one turns out.
Sounds good, man. It was a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Okay. Talk to you soon, Rob.
Take care.